Now, true or false? Georgia was completely founded by prisoners. False. There were some prisoners there from debtors to prison, but other than that, most people willingly went as indentured servants. We talked about the similarities between the colonies that were already established and those being the plantation economy, the single staple crop, which at this time was tobacco. If you had money, you also had power, and you get power, you get control. Believe me, I know that one. You had a lot of slavery flourishing, and when slavery becomes the slave codes and the racism, it's a natural progression, it's a logical progression. In Spain, they had been sending people over to the New World for a while. They already have a foothold in Florida. If anybody's ever seen Paula Poundstone, you know she doesn't like Florida. She wants a boat to come along and just kind of knock it off the bottom there. But she doesn't like the way it hangs down. I don't know. I have theories about that. But so the Spanish are in Florida. They've been in Florida for a while. They've been in there since 1565 when they established St. Augustine, which is the oldest European-found city in America. And it's perfect for Robert Goodall to live there. And we will be watching Robert Goodall on Thursday. In 1598, the Spanish will establish Santa Fe, which is in what we call now New Mexico. The idea of a colony is to make money. Duh. Does anybody not know this? You have a colony so you can get stuff from them and make money. In 1700, you had about 1,500 people living in St. Augustine, mostly inside the fort. Now, around Halloween, they show these things on the Travel Channel. Watch the one on Key West. It's fascinating. It's basically, the island is named after the piles of bones that they find there when they show up. It's really fascinating. It's got a lot of really good historical things. A lot of those shows are really good history lessons, and they're entertaining. They can keep your attention. In 1700, you had about 3,000 people in Santa Fe, mostly ranchers and soldiers and clergy. What were the clergy person's main job? What did they set out to do? I like the H word. What do they use a lot? Convert the heathens, right. You have to remember, let's put it in its time frame. They're heathens because they're not like us. Anybody that is not European at this time is a heathen. Now, Britain thinks this about Spain. Spain thinks this about Britain. So, obviously, the Spanish and the British get over here and they see native peoples running around half naked and being all happy and just carefree and not miserable like they are. They have to squash that out real quick. They can't be happy and us not be happy because they can't run around naked while we have to wear all this itchy wool. So this isn't going to happen. So they don't want people to be happy, so that's where the clergy comes in. They have to show them the error of their ways, which aren't really errors, it's just how one perceives. In 1675, you had about 10,000 Indians in Florida. Like I said, they came there to convert the native heathens. The Spanish will work with the Native Americans a little bit more than the British and the other European people will. And they will bring Europe to Florida. Sort of, kind of. They never do find the Fountain of Youth. They learn that that they're going to be civilized, which means they get to work for nothing. They get wiped out by disease. In response to the treatment of the Spanish because the Spanish treat them so bad, the Indians will leave, and they lead an insurrection in 1680, and that's the Pueblo Revolt, and they will drive the Spanish out of Mexico finally. A guy named Pope, who is an Indian spiritual leader, will lead a huge uprising against the Spanish, and they kill about 400 people and burn houses, kill animals, things like that. Despite all this problem, the Spanish stay in Florida. What is the biggest group of immigrants that now lives in Florida? From which country? Cuba, right. The Spanish offer freedom to any slave that would escape from one of the other colonies and make it there, but then they would turn around and put them to work for them. The French built forts in Biloxi and in Mobile. That way they could protect the Gulf Coast against whoever else might try to come in and take what is their land. The Spanish will continue to come to Florida and settle Florida. And then in 1769, I would know this guy, Friar Junipero Serra, will colonize California. And Spain is also responsible for this. So the Spanish have established by this time a pretty good foothold in Florida and what we now know as New Mexico, and now they're working their way across to California, which is over here. You just can't see it. It's right over here. So after this guy gets to California, it's going to open up more and more territory for the Spanish to claim. Any questions on chapter 2? Chapter 3 is a little more interesting. Does anybody in here ever have a dream that came true? It was really odd. Okay. Let's go back in time. While you still have no Europeans on the North American continent, and you have native holy men, healers, things like that, and they go into the sweat lodge and they have visions, they have dreams. They have strange dreams that make no sense to them until the Europeans show up. They see them as strange creatures, things like that. In the 1660s, a lot of their visions will start coming true. The big one being the one with large canoes with great white wings like those of a giant bird. What does that describe? The ship. Now, if you look at a picture of a ship, would it kind of look like a big ship or a big canoe with wings like that of a bird? It kind of would. They also would see in their visions filled with bearded men, tailed with long black tubes, meaning guns. The first white explorers were probably French, English, or Dutch. Spanish, more than likely. Jacques Cartier, and he's not the diamond guy. I already looked that up. He decided in 1535 he was going to look for, what is everybody else looking for? Passage to Asia. Looks like they'd give up on that by now. Instead, he discovers the St. Lawrence River, which comes down out of Canada and into this part of the In 1605, you have a French colony started at Port Royal in Nova Scotia. Now, then you have this guy Samuel de Champlain. Who knows the name of the alleged monster in Lake Champlain? Champ, right. I wonder if they saw him. Anyway. He is going to found Quebec. Or if you live in Canada, it's Quebec. I'm from the south. I say Quebec. What he does is he follows the rivers into the interior to find that passage to the Pacific. Is there a passage to the Pacific with those river systems? Not really, unless you carry your boat a couple thousand miles where there is like desert and junk. So he wants to find the passage to the Pacific Ocean. Well, thank goodness he's not looking for the Northwest Passage to India. unless he didn't put that out on his request form. They had friendly relations with the Algonquins. You may ever see or read Last of the Mohicans. The Algonquins are in that book. It's a really good movie, by the way. I read the book too. I like the movie better. And then you have the Moctanays. I don't know. They have a lot of trade opportunities. You have a lot of animals in Canada at this time because by this time most of the animals are being wiped out in North America. So you have a lot of beaver, otter, raccoon pelts. For a long time, beaver pelts are going to be a greatly prized pelt for women to make fur coats out of. Especially in London. Why? It's cold and rainy. Where does a beaver live? So that means that his pelt is waterproof. Makes sense, doesn't it? So if you have a beaver fur coat, it's a symbol. It's a really good status symbol. They like to make hats out of the raccoon pelts. They're really good to, the pelts are really good to line boots, things like that. Mink and marten, which is also sort of like a mink or a ferret, will be exported to be raised and killed. I have a problem with minks. I have a problem with fur. You kill an animal, you use all of the animal. You don't just cut off its fur and throw it away. That's how it works. King Louis XVI and Cardinal Richelieu, where are they from? Which book? Remember? Charlie Sheen was in a movie called this, where they had swords. Three Musketeers, right? So these guys really existed, but it wasn't like it was in that movie. So King Louis and Cardinal Richelieu are going to give large areas of land to private investors, which will form the company of the 100 Associates. And what they're going to do is they're going to send farmers over there to cultivate over 200 million acres of land along the St. Lawrence River. Therefore, this will set them up as having established colonies. Now, in Europe in the meantime, remember we talked about the Protestant Revolution and how Henry broke with the church to marry Anne Boleyn, then consequently had her head chopped off? Well, there's a counter-reformation, and the Catholic Church is going to start reclaiming some of that power that they lost because of Henry and the other Protestants, especially who? He nailed something to a door. Martin Luther, right. So they get some of their power back. Now, where the plow goes, so go the missionaries. So the Jesuits, or the Society of Jesus, are sent to Canada, what we now know as Canada, to convert the native people to the right kind of Christianity. Are we detecting a theme here? When they conquer a new people, what do they want to do? Conform them. I don't conform to anything. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I'm not a conformist. You know, the weirder it is, the more I like it. So they're going to convert people to the right kind of Christianity. None of this running around in animal hides and just doing whatever you dang well please on Sunday. This ain't going to fly. The Jesuits will make no real impressions on the natives because they're really not assertive enough. And some of them kind of disappear. They go for little walks in the woods and they are never seen again. And they turn out to be more of a nuisance than anything. So where the priests and the religious people have no impact, it's going to be the traders that are going to have better luck, because do the native tribes trade with other people? Is trade an international language of sorts? Yes, so they're going to have better luck, and they're not there to tell them that everything they believe spiritually is wrong. Because chances are these traders are just out for themselves. So these guys are called this. I don't speak French. Anybody here speak French? Can you pronounce that for me?
Courrier de bois.
Thank you. So this is what they are. It sounds like couriers. Anybody ever visited New England, the New England states? Nobody? When the first settlers came over here, they saw the New England area that we now know as Vermont, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, this area. They see this as uninhabitable because they didn't venture that far. I mean, the first time they made it to Roanoke Island, the second time they made it to Jamestown in the Chesapeake area, and they haven't really gone that much farther. They're kind of a little nervous because if you have an entire group of people disappear from like right here, you really don't want to push your luck. So they're not going too far this way. They're kind of stopping right there in what's now Virginia. So they see the New England area as uninhabitable because it is closer to the North Pole, which means they're going to have shorter summers. They're going to have cold winters. There are no real minerals to mine up there. There are lots and lots of codfish, though. I mean, isn't that the reason they came to the New World in the first place? Because they were running out of fish? So, yeah. There are no natives to enslave up there because that coast is primarily uninhabited because the tribe used that as a hunting and sacred area. By 1620, you're going to have the Pilgrims making their little trip. So by 1620, England is just a big old mess. And a lot of people are saying, you know what? Even burning up at the equator is better than living here. We have got to go somewhere. They got a lot of things coming at them, a lot of religious differences. You've got which two churches battling each other? The Catholic and the Protestant church, right? So you got like this. Is that still going on between England and like Scotland and Ireland, places like that? Yeah, because England's Protestant and those other two countries are primarily Catholic. A lot of political tensions. There's not enough land. There's not enough power positions to go around. You have a lot of unemployment. What's been going on since the last plague wiped about a third of them out. They're in overdrive. They're overproducing again. So there's lots and lots of people. There aren't a lot of jobs. And the financial system is just about ready to collapse. So they're thinking, okay, surely anything will be better than this. James I will start the settlement process in 1603 when he becomes the king. He doesn't like the Puritans. The Puritans don't like him. They think that he is just every little thing you could say about sin and bad stuff. They really don't like this guy. He doesn't like them either. He says they're too uptight. The English love to party. The Puritans are, they spend every waking hour in prayer or things like that. So they're not a whole lot of fun to have at a party. And he thinks they have really weird beliefs. They believe in something called predestination. They believe that everything that will happen to you and will happen to you and has happened to you was predestined. And that God has decided this for every human being on the face of the earth. He's been a busy guy. If this is what you believe. They believe in a divine plan, and they're going to follow John Calvin's teachings, and they want to mold society in the way he wants it. The English government doesn't like the Puritans, especially James does not like them. And the Puritans think that the government that's supposed to protect them is allowing everything in the world that they're against to happen to spite them. It's probably true. Now, things like drunkenness. That you couldn't drink the water, what were you going to drink? So, you know, 12 years old has an ale with their dinner. They don't like theaters. They don't like plays, things like that, because it's the 1600s. Who plays the women's parts? So what are they dressing in? Drag, essentially. So they don't like this because men are not supposed to wear women's garments, and the vice versa. That's what the Bible teaches. So they don't like this. They don't like gambling. I don't like gambling because I always lose. They don't like extravagance. They don't like the way that the king dresses all pretty with their big wigs and everything. They don't like it when people swear in public. If I don't swear in public at least once when I'm at Walmart, it's not been a fun trip. You know? They don't like public swearing, and they don't like the fact that everybody's not forced to go to church on Sunday in the Anglican church. But every Sunday, the Puritans are right there. They have to be, and their ministers are standing up there in those big pulpits. I know if you've seen Scarlet Letter, it's up there. If you're not in church, where are you going? You're going to go here if you're not in church every Sunday, and everybody's shaking in fear. So the Puritans are not fun, okay? And the Puritans don't like the king don't like the Puritans. He says, I want them out of my country so we can party, essentially.
Are there a lot of Puritans?
There's, yeah, quite a few. Not as many as there will be, because once they get the community set up, then you're going to have more and more, you know, coming out, so to speak. I don't know. The Puritans don't like the idea that under the Church of England, everybody's considered a member. The Puritans believe that being a member of a church is an exclusive club. And you only get those special privileges if you follow those special induction ceremonies. Which the one would be what? Where they dump water on you. Of course, they believe in full immersion baptism, but the Catholics just do that thing, so they don't like that. So the Church of England does that too. And they feel that only godly men and women should be allowed to attend church. And of course, who are the only godly men and women? The Puritans, right. Elizabeth I was a little more tolerant of the Puritans. You could blame that on her gender. She was a very tolerant lady. She put up with her sister trying to kill her for years. So she's pretty tolerant. James I, he doesn't have the motherly instinct that Elizabeth would have had. So he does not like these people, and he's not going to be as tolerant. So we're going to stop there.